Hi, everybody. So we have a new advisory in from the National Hurricane Center. Once again, it is Hurricane Ian. This is not a huge deal. It's not good, obviously, but it's not a huge change. It's not going to super intensify or anything, so I don't want anybody to get too freaked out about that. But obviously, we prefer it to go the other way. Bruin, I see your message here. I hope you're seeing the graphic that says live update in 4 minutes, plus a little bit. Just letting people gather and looking at the changes in the information in the new advisory here to be sure I have it all. Hi, everybody. It's 5:19 Eastern Time on Thursday afternoon, September 29th. And we have a new advisory on now Hurricane Ian once again. I don't want anybody to go like kind of freaky about the fact that we do indeed have another hurricane, or Ian is back to being a hurricane. Yes, it's a little bit stronger, and we don't like stronger, definitely, but this is not going to blow up into some big old hurricane. It's an 80-mile-an-hour hurricane now. But I thought I'd start here by going over what happened at Landfall, just so you have a better understanding while it's all fresh in our minds, and then we'll get to all the new information. So when we look at this map here, there are two things that I want you to notice. One is the colors, and the other is the wind direction. So notice on the colors, the kind of whitish areas, which are these areas right in here, that's where the strongest winds are, over 100 miles an hour at landfall. The ones in the yellow here are in the 60 to 100 mile an hour range. And notice that's a big, wide band. Because this hurricane was such a big hurricane, we had a big, wide band of strong winds. And notice where those winds and the white winds are pushing the water at landfall. And you see it coming in right into the Naples area there. So before the storm ever made landfall, water was being pushed toward Naples because Naples is totally exposed to the coast. Fort Myers has all these islands out here, from Gasparilla Island down to Cayo Costa, and then Captiva and Sanibel, all kind of protect for the Fort Myers area temporarily, but not permanently, obviously. So then looking close up here, again, we're just looking at a snapshot in time at landfall. You can see at this point that the wind is starting to push the water up the Caloosahatchee River. Fort Myers is way inland here. What is it, about 10 miles inland up there, 10 or 12 miles, maybe even a little more. So it's just starting to push the water that way. But when the center of the storm, which is over here, gets far to the north, then it's going to, as it goes that way, it's going to keep pushing the water that way and keep pushing it. And then as a result of that, the water can't ever run out and just builds up and builds up and builds up in the river. And that's why we got the flooding in downtown Fort Myers. In Cape Coral, the southern half of Cape Coral here, that all got flooded more directly because the water just got pushed directly in there. But to get it up the river, you've got to keep pushing on it and keep pushing on it. Now I'll go down here. So Sanibel got water from a bunch of different directions. Sanibel got water because the strong winds were pushing it in over the island like you see here at landfall. And then when the storm went by, it started pushing water this way over Sanibel as well. So Sanibel Island really got a hard hit. I haven't seen much about Captiva, but I can't believe that that's not very, very bad as well. And Fort Myers Beach, of course, got decimated there because the water just came completely over. You can see the strongest winds in the hurricane pushed water over Fort Myers Beach. And actually Fort Myers Beach, because it sits there so exposed, ahead of time I was thinking, and if you were watching the lead up, I was saying Fort Myers Beach is just primed here to be the epicenter of storm surge because it doesn't have the protection and so forth as some of the other islands. And sure enough, the water came completely over there, and that community is essentially destroyed now. It's going to take quite some time to build that back. Then looking a little bit to the north, up here, this is Gasparilla Island here. It's a beautiful place. The water came this way into Gasparilla Island because this up here is Charlotte Harbor, and all this is a waterway in here. And so since this was so close to the eye, no doubt, I haven't seen any pictures of this yet or any definitive reports from Boca Grande or from Gasparilla Island in general, but I bet that was indeed overtopped. And then north further, as you can see, the circulation here pushing the water up into Charlotte Harbor, and then we have significant flooding up here in Port Charlotte and around Punta Gorda, and all these places up there in Charlotte Harbor. So, that's just a brief kind of rundown on what exactly happened here. All right, so let's go on and talk about, let me see, I'm not sure why I'm seeing all this again. Let's see. Let's go through it and see exactly where we are. I'll tell you what I'm going to have to do here is I'm going to have to, now I see what happened. All right, sorry about this. I'm going to have to go through this one more time. In any case, you understand because the wind direction and the wind strength were aimed at a certain place, that's why we had this incredible amount of storm surge. Okay, here we are with the current situation, and here you see the center of the storm. And this hurricane, now Hurricane Ian, with 75-mile-an-hour winds, moving north-northeast at 10, so it's moving 1 mile per hour faster. So the hallmarks of the forecasting of this is, first of all, that it's insisted on going down the right side of the cone. Throughout its lifetime, it's insisted on going down the right side of the cone. I can't tell you why that's the case, but that is indeed the case. So that's the first thing. The second thing is that it's been going extremely slowly, which was forecast very well, and now it's picked up 1 more mile per hour. The thinking is it will pick up speed as it makes the turn up into South Carolina. But as the National Hurricane Center acknowledges, there is higher than normal uncertainty here about this situation. All right, so what's going on with the rain, this incredible rain? So I've been talking about this system is having 4 phases. The first one was in southwest Florida, all the devastation there. The second one was in northeast Florida and central Florida, the devastation from the flooding there. And this shows you that core of moisture that was over the Orlando, Daytona Beach, New Smyrna Beach, up to St. Augustine, really, area, and now it's moving offshore, just the slightest bit of effect on the coastline here. But as the storm spins out here, you can see it forcing water in toward the coast. So storm surge is right now up and down with the tide. So at the high tides, you're going to get the maximum storm surge, and it's going to be up and down pretty good. So you're going to have to be very careful at high tide all the way from south of Daytona on around Savannah and up into Georgia, where you have that convex, or concave, I guess that is, concave coastline there. That's going to be significant storm surge in the short term. Then as we go north, well, I did want to mention all the incredible rain in that whole belt there across Florida. This part was part of phase 1 down here, and then this part was part of phase 2 up here. And then we get up, the storm goes up toward South Carolina, and here you see the forecast, 80-mile-an-hour winds. So when it comes ashore near Charleston, around Charleston, bearing in mind that it's constantly bared to the right, and we're very much hoping, because as anybody that knows Charleston knows, that it floods down at the Battery in the historic part of Charleston quite often now with king tides and just the general rise in the tide level due to a warmer planet and a changing climate, but mostly in this case a warmer planet. The water is higher than ever. It floods, and now we're going to add to that if the storm comes into the right of Charleston. So Charleston is here. Now, if the storm comes in anywhere up here, that takes less pressure off of Charleston because the wind's going to come from the other direction. Still get some water rise in advance of the storm, but not the big water rise, and more up here to toward Myrtle Beach, perhaps, or farther up the South Carolina coast. And the Hurricane Center has put up hurricane warnings all the way up to Cape Fear because of this kind of drift to the right, this concern that it continues to do that. So they wanted to alert everybody into North Carolina of the potential for hurricane warnings. So here we can't see it yet. It's barely there, right along the coast of Cape Fear, and then all through South Carolina with the hurricane warnings. If the trend continues and the system shifts a little bit to the right, I suspect that the hurricane warnings down here will get dropped. They're being issued the ones that you see on this map are being issued by the Charleston National Weather Service Office and the Columbia National Weather Service Office. That's why you see a little bit of a hodgepodge over here with, in this area here, we have this tropical storm watch issued with a warning up here. That's because they're different National Weather Service offices, which makes it a little bit confusing. But bottom line is everybody in this area needs to be ready for the possibility of tropical storm force. 40-mile-an-hour winds are higher. You can see the National Hurricane Center forecast is when the storm is in this area, that the sustained winds will be 35. That makes the gusts 45, 50 miles an hour. That's enough to take down tree limbs and power lines and stuff like that. So that's what everybody needs to be ready for, the possibility of the power going out, on top of the possibility of heavy rain. This is going to move up into the mountains, and the winds will slowly die down. So depending on how close you are to the coast, you're going to get gusty winds in the mountains with heavy rain, and then the storm will move farther inland. And here's a look at the rain. You can see this large area of rain here encompasses everything east of Tennessee, most of South Carolina, most of North Carolina, and a good part of Virginia. The peak rain over land, you can see it here going up in the direction of Charlotte. So basically Charleston to near Myrtle Beach and up to Charlotte for this area of very heavy rain and potential for flooding. But up in the mountains, once you get to the high country, of course, it doesn't take as much rain to get flooding, because the rain kind of funnels down into lower lying areas and then comes on down to lower elevations. So it's a little different situation in the low country than it is as you get up into the Piedmont, as you get into the upstate, although most of the upstate, the west part anyway, according to the current forecast, is not in this, but certainly the Piedmont and then up into the mountains, you're going to get rain, and there is this threat of flash flooding. So looking at the way the winds are going to blow here, look at the size of the winds, the 40-mile-an-hour winds, just huge, extending way up into North Carolina, because this storm is stretching out because of the upper-level winds. As I said, it's 80 miles an hour forecast as a maximum, because these upper-level winds are not conducive to its strengthening, and its structure is no longer conducive to its strengthening. It's more like a hybrid nor'easter storm at the current time. Then the system moves up to near Charleston. The thinking is that the hurricane force gusts in the orange here will arrive at the coast about 6 a.m. tomorrow morning. So this event is going to happen tomorrow in South Carolina, and National Hurricane Center forecast brings it ashore somewhere in the early afternoon. This is the 1 p.m. forecast here, and you can see that it really depends. The center of the system, let me erase that. So the center of the system is over here. You can see it's sort of right side and front side loaded for the most part with the hurricane force winds, and that's just because of the structure of the system the way it is now. Remembering on the right side in here somewhere is where, in this kind of scenario, is where the maximum storage surge is going to be, along this part of the coast, somewhere north of Charleston. But no guarantee at this point that it's not going to go a little south or a little north of the Charleston area. And that makes a lot of difference to how much water comes into Charleston Harbor there at the Battery. Okay, and just to highlight so we have all these different things going on at the same time. It gets to be a lot, I know. But we have this heavy rain threat, or we have the storm surge threat that I was talking about, and then the heavy rain threat. Here is the core area of the heavy rain threat, including Myrtle Beach up to Raleigh, and then up to about Roanoke, and then back down Charlotte, Columbia, and Charleston. This is the area with a very likely flash flood threat. So different situations. Nearer to the coast, flash flood threat because you get heavy rain. It doesn't rain very well. It takes a good long while, as you know, for those rivers to clear there. You get up in the higher elevation, maybe less total rain, but it comes down the steeper terrain into gullies and rivers and streams and so forth. So still we have this very likely flash flood threat in this area. So this is kind of phase 4, right? So phase 3 is the storm surge at the coast. Phase 4 being the flash flood threat that extends up into the mountains. So it's quite a storm. So let me stop there and let's see what questions we have. All right, so let's see. What can we expect in Metro Atlanta? Well, Metro Atlanta looks like you're going to be pretty much out of this. This is going to be east of there, as I've talked about, the jet stream winds blowing over to the east. You know, we have so many. I wonder, do you think we have so many fewer people on today because the storm is over for Florida? I bet that's what it is. Or I wonder if there's something wrong with the stream. Interesting. I'm going to have to double check this. But in any case, glad to have you folks here that are listening. So what can we expect in Metro Atlanta? I don't expect very much because it looks like this is going to be mostly to the east of Atlanta. The upper level winds, as I've said, are kind of blowing quick that way, and they're going to stretch the system out to the east. So that's why you see the rain spread all over the Carolinas. And there was a time when we thought this was going to come to Atlanta, but it does not now look like that's going to be the case. All right, so let's see. How did Inverness do in the storm? So let me see if I can tell, because the heavy rain area in central Florida, Inverness, I think, probably did very well in the storm. It's north of that heavy rain corridor. No doubt it rained there hard and so forth, but I think there's no indication for me, what I know, that Inverness had any significant problem in the storm. So this is a really good question. Wonder if there's anything else in the Atlantic, South Florida should be aware of. Of course, everybody's watching Ian. So there is another system just coming off of Africa, and there's another potential one down by the Caribbean, but nothing is imminent, and none of the forecasts for the one coming off of Africa look threatening. So certainly nothing in the next 5 days that are going to be some kind of threat. There is that system over by Africa that we'll keep an eye on, but we don't see any significant threat from that at this time. But check with me the middle of next week, and then we'll see. How about Wilmington, North Carolina? Yeah, Wilmington, you guys are going to get heavy rain, and you have you can see here on the map, Wilmington is right up in here, is just inland here, up from Cape Fear. Cape Fear River comes down here, and you're right on the edge of the super heavy rain. But look, this whole green area says flash flooding is likely in parts of this. Now, obviously, of course, the river goes right through Wilmington and on down to Cape Fear, and you all know down on Water Street that it does flood there. So it really depends on how much rain in Wilmington. The flooding comes from rain that falls upstream up here and then comes down the river through Wilmington and goes down to the ocean at the same time that the water from the ocean is being pushed up and holding it back. So we're going to have both of those conditions. The question is whether we have them to a significant enough degree to get flooding in Wilmington. So I'm going to defer to the National Weather Service office in Wilmington for you to check your local forecast and see what degree the threat is there. And when I'm finished here, I'm going to check in on them as well. And let's see. But the pieces are there for flooding in Wilmington, but they may not be strong like in Matthew, for example. We had tremendous flooding, and that was because you just had so much rain inland and this big storm surge. This is not the strength of Matthew and so forth, but it is a big storm. So it's going to be a close call for Wilmington. I'm going to check out the threat there when we're done. Willie Dry asks, no, that wasn't Willie Dry. What is Ian Pro now? Well, that's a good question. I don't know. All storms are just its. The questions were coming in so quick that I missed Willie's there. Willie Dry is asking a question. Is there any chance that Ian might be upgraded to Category 5 after all the data is checked and examined? It could be. We don't see any indications of that. Honestly, the wind damage does not look like Category 5. The damage we're seeing that's catastrophic appears to be storm surge damage, and buildings on that side of the state are not built great in general unless they're new, and then they're just built well. So I'm not seeing indications of Category 5, but of course that's not based on damage, that's based on the data, and they will examine that very closely. They also put out a whole ton of sensors, over 100 sensors, I think, maybe 150 sensors to sense the storm surge and how deep it was, and then they have to go out and collect them, and then they'll know exactly how much storm surge occurred, and they'll use that to calibrate future hurricane models and so forth. Let's talk about North Carolina. Let me just be able to locate that for you here just one second. So let's check in on Pinehurst, North Carolina. And Pinehurst is up near the Charlotte, between Charlotte and Fayetteville. So you can see on our map here, you're right in this potential for flash flooding area. So the National Weather Service is calling it very likely to have flash flooding. So this means that the low-lying areas, be sure you park your car in a higher area, be ready for the power to be out, because it is going to be gusty there. You're right in the core of where the remnants of Ian are going to come up this way. So, may very well have trees down, limbs down, and combined with a flood threat there in Pinehurst, a beautiful area there in North Carolina. Let's see. What about the storm surge headed for Hilton Head? Well, so Hilton Head is down here in the southern part of South Carolina. It's down in here. So the storm surge in Hilton Head, let me see if I can back up this graphic some. All right, so let's stop it right there. This is midnight tonight, so a little past, obviously, where we are right now. So you see the clock up here, midnight tonight. So while the storm is moving up in this direction, let me draw the arrow there. The circulation around the storm is like this, right? So what that means is that the water is being driven into this area here. National Hurricane Center is forecasting 4 to 6 feet of storm surge above normal high tide. So the question becomes, when is the high tide in Wilmington? And let me see if I can find that for you. I should be able to do that. Or in Hilton Head, I mean. Let's check. I don't have Hilton Head on here, but I have Charleston. So the next high tide would be 11 o'clock at night. So we're actually at low tide, more or less, now. Let's compare that to Savannah, just to be sure that there's not any big difference in tides. No, it's about the same. So we're at low tide now. So you wouldn't be seeing storm surge now. Let's just see what the tide swing is there on that coast. And what it is, I have to click a couple things to find it. So the normal tide swing is huge. So the normal tide swing is like 7 feet. So on your coast right now, no doubt you don't have any flooding. But the storm surge and the high tide are going to come together like at high tide coming, what did I say, 11:30 or so tonight. So late this evening is going to be dangerous near the coast in Hilton Head based on what I'm seeing here right now. Because if the storm is in this location here, right where it's located on this graphic at midnight tonight, then that means it's going to be driving water like I was showing toward the coast like this. And if the tide swings up and it's this huge tide swing, then add storm surge on top of that, you could get 10 feet or more above the water now, 10 to 12 feet above where the water is now at the coast. So, gauge yourself according to that. But that's going to happen at high tide coming up at 11:30 tonight. Let's see, what other, who else is on? Ocean Isle Beach, North Carolina. I've got to look that up. I don't know. I know a lot of places along the North Carolina coast, but that one I don't know. Ocean Isle Beach, North Carolina. Okay, Ocean Isle Beach is, Ocean Isle Beach is, south of, by Holden Beach, I see. Okay. All right, so Ocean Isle Beach is, let me go back to the maps here. Ocean Isle Beach is up in here. So you're going to be on the fringe of it, but there still is storm surge forecast there. So again, that's later tonight when that water is going to peak up in that part of North Carolina. Later tonight with the high tide, you're going to, the high tide and the storm surge are going to coincide for you. So, check whatever your local officials are saying there about coastal flooding. From what I'm seeing right here, it looks like there would be a threat. How about the Augusta area, Aiken, South Carolina? Aiken, what a magnificent place that is. So you're going to be a little bit on the fringe of it. Let me go forward here and, we're going to advance the story. So we're talking over here in this part of Georgia and South Carolina as it moves in, but I want to show you the heavy rain area here. So you see that Augusta and Aiken are on the left side of the graphic in here, and so it's going to rain, and there is some possible flooding in that rain, but not, it looks like you're going to miss the core of this threat. It'll be right on the fringe. Okay. Let's see. No, I'm seeing your YouTube questions, but maybe there is some kind of an issue with YouTube because I'm only seeing a few YouTube questions. You see, Erica came in on YouTube. Let's see, a question about Florida. Is Ian completely off Florida? It's essentially completely off Florida. There's still a little bit of rain right along the coast, but that's just about gone. All right, Bob, I hope you got the answer to the question. In Hilton Head, the big issue is tonight. High tide tonight, about 11:30 tonight. So it's all going to come up late tonight. Be sure you stay in close touch with the authorities there, what level they're expecting on Hilton Head and exactly who is threatened. But from what I'm seeing, it looks like a significant surge coming with high tide later on tonight. Here's a question about the North Carolina mountains. How confident are we it's going to the North Carolina mountains? It's been shifting right the whole time. We're in Raleigh and keeping an eye out. Yes, you're absolutely right. It has been shifting right the whole time, but it's also stretching right. So you see that Raleigh is in the very likely storm surge threat zone, not storm surge threat zone, flash flood threat zone there. So you should be keeping a close eye on it in Raleigh. And also the winds are stretching out to the right. So I would expect tropical storm force gusts in Raleigh with very heavy rain, potentially flooding rain. So definitely low-lying areas, be sure to park your car on a higher place, someplace. If it floods during heavy rain, definitely don't park your car there. Put it on higher ground. Watch out for trees, putting your car under trees. Just be aware of what can happen when you have just strong gusts. This isn't going to be a hurricane, strong gusts in Raleigh that can take down a tree limb or something like that in the very heavy rain. Please comment on the storm surge in Georgetown, North Carolina. So Georgetown, you folks need to be very aware of the storm surge. So tonight when the high tide comes up, which again is going to be late this evening, keep an eye on that. But it looks like to me tomorrow morning would be the bigger storm surge threat time for Georgetown. Let me go back here on my graphics once again, and let's go forward here and look. So Georgetown is up in this area up in here. It's south of Myrtle Beach, so it's up in here. And so you can see that when we get to 6 o'clock in the morning, that's going to be more or less low tide. So the water is going to be pushed up against there, but you're probably not going to notice that because it's going to be low tide. But then with this slow moving storm, when we get to midday tomorrow, then the water is going to be pushed in. So this is the time in Myrtle Beach and in Georgetown that you're going to be on the lookout for storm surge. Looks like midday tomorrow will be the peak, and it could be significant. So again, be sure you keep in touch with the local authorities there on what they're forecasting for your particular area. But from what I'm seeing, this looks like a threat, especially at high tide tomorrow morning. Here's a question about the models. How far did Ian deviate from the predicted models? So there are many different kinds of models. If you've been following me, you know that there are the very specific lines that are drawn that are used by the National Hurricane Center to make the forecast. And then we have these models that show how much uncertainty there is in the forecast, those yellow spaghettis as we show them. So it has stayed in that uncertainty cone for sure, and it's stayed in or right at the edge of the cone, the regular forecast cone in terms of the center of the storm. We have this huge communications problem where people still kind of think if I'm in the cone, it's bad. If I'm out of the cone, I'm okay. But the storm is so much bigger than the cone, so obviously we have to be concerned about that communications problem as we move forward. So the models have not been great on this storm. It keeps wanting to go right, and it's going to take some time to try and understand why that is. WIS, the WIS is in Columbia, South Carolina, told everyone to stay home tomorrow. I'm in Virginia, so no go staying home. Well, WIS is giving you good advice because in Columbia it's going to be very gusty where branches can be coming down, the trees can be coming down, and torrential rain potential for likely, in fact the National Weather Service is saying very likely, flash flooding in the upstate and the central part of South Carolina. So I think that WIS is giving you good advice in South Carolina. Let's see. Here's a place I don't know that I have to look up. Hope Mills in North Carolina. Hold on just one second. Let me get there. Hope Mills, North Carolina is... let's see. Hope Mills, North Carolina is... Okay, near Fayetteville. Okay, you're in the same area just outside of Fayetteville. It's another new one for me. Spent a lot of time in North Carolina, but I've never been to Hope Mills. So this is up near Fayetteville and south of Raleigh, of course. So let's look at the map here. And so Hope Mills is in this area right in here. So you're obviously going to be in it from a wind standpoint and from this flooding standpoint. So let's locate you here in this area in here. So this is in that flash flood threat zone. So heavy, again, very gusty winds, very heavy rain. This is going to be tomorrow. So just like the advice there in Columbia, tomorrow will be a day to stay home and be sure your car is not parked under a tree where a branch could fall on it or a tree could fall on it and so forth. In that whole zone there where it's going to rain that hard. When it rains hard, the roots on the trees become more pliable and the tree is more likely to fall over. So That's the word for tomorrow. Somerville, yes, this will not be a Hugo for sure. We're not expecting a Hugo here, but we are expecting a dangerous event. Again, if you weren't with me just a little while ago, I was talking about Hugo. Hugo came in just north of Charleston and ended up with 100-mile-an-hour winds in Charlotte and did a lot of damage. So we do not expect that because this storm isn't starting out as strong, and Hugo was giant and all kinds of other horrible things happened with Hugo. This is still a big storm, and it's going to come ashore as something close to a hurricane, but it will die out more quickly, and the energy in this is going to spread over a large area way out into the ocean and spread the rain all the way east to Cape Hatteras. So let me see who else. Interesting, a whole bunch of people just jumped on recently. I wonder if there's been something strange with the messages coming out of coming from YouTube. Will Bel Air, Maryland get anything? You might get a little bit, but you're going to be right on the northern fringe of it. This is really going to be a Carolina and Virginia. I haven't talked much about Virginia, but you can see Virginia is in the, especially the southern part of Virginia, is in this zone here of potential flash flooding, and rain will spread up in Virginia and will spread into Maryland, but not the intense, dangerous rain and not the strong winds. So not really worried about it there. It won't be a nice weather, but it shouldn't be threatening. Here's a good question. How about tornadoes? Mark wants to know. Well, tornadoes are going to be an issue, or are a potential issue anyway. So wherever the center goes ashore, tornadoes can occur to the right of that, and these bands will come in like this. So in those bands of rain, so in the intense rain, you can get tornadoes. So everybody needs to be on the lookout for this tomorrow. Obviously, everybody's going to be warning about this. We're going to be watching for it very closely. But yes, that's the fourth threat with hurricanes. You have the wind, you have the storm surge, you have the heavy rain, flooding rain, and you have the tornadoes. You don't get a lot of them usually, although sometimes you do. And in a situation like this, we do have a lot of twisting in the atmosphere as this system transitions into a non-tropical system. So significant possibility of tornadoes, especially in the area, in this area here, in southern parts of closer to the water, because the storm is just going to weaken as it goes north. Anybody else? Anybody else before I go? In fact, I really do have to go. All right. So a question about what about the Northeast? Let me just answer that. This isn't going to go a whole lot past Washington, Maryland. It's going to go out to sea. So this is not going to be a system. This is not going to be like Ida or something like that comes up to the Northeast. All right, guys, I'm going to wrap up now because I have to get set for Fox Weather. So I hope I'll see you on Fox Weather. Download the Fox Weather app on your phone. You can watch the channel at any time. Also on Roku, if you search for Fox Weather, you'll find that. And also on Amazon Fire and other streaming services, YouTube TV, and like that, or foxweather.com. You can watch it anytime. It's all free, so no ads, nothing getting in the way if you stay in close touch. All right, thanks so much for all your comments. Thanks for everything here the last few days. Tomorrow, I don't know if we'll continue. We'll just see what the situation is, but if it warrants it, I'll be on here, and of course, you'll be notified on Facebook and YouTube. All right, and have a good night, and good luck to everybody, and stay aware, and let's get through this. Take care.